Welcome to Data Talk, presented by IDEA Data and Research. DATA stands for Data Analysis Techniques Applied. Data Talk is a series of webinars for Arkansas's local education agencies on the use of data, particularly for special education staff. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of Data Talk. In this episode, we will present a Disproportionality Comparison, Annual Performance Report, also known as APR, versus Significant Disproportionality, also known as SIG-Dispro. Disproportionality categories of analysis. The slides are split into two categories, Annual Performance Report versus Significant Disproportionality. The left side throughout the presentation represents the APR. The right side is SIG-Dispro, and the center is the name of the element. On the left side of the slide are the APR disproportionality elements. Indicator 4A, discipline, out-of-school suspensions and expulsions. Indicator 4B, discipline, out-of-school suspension, expulsions by race. Indicator 9, identification by race. Indicator 10, specific disability category by race. On the right side of the slide are the significant dispro elements. Discipline action taken by race includes in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and total removals, including alternative education due to discipline. Identification by race, specific disability category by race, and the least restrictive environment by race. We will address each of these elements on the following slides. The first element we are going to discuss is discipline. The measurement for discipline for the APR is a significant difference in discipline, special education versus general education. Indicator 4A is the significant discrepancy in the rate of suspensions and expulsions of greater than 10 days in a school year for children with IEPs compared to rates of suspension and expulsions of the greater than 10 days in a school year for children without IEPs. If the special education rate is more than 1.36 points higher than the general education rate, a district will flag and be required to submit a self-assessment. The second discipline measurement in the APR is Indicator 4B, significant discrepancy in the rate of suspensions and expulsions of greater than 10 days in a school year for children with IEPs by a specific race, compared to the rate of suspensions and expulsions of greater than 10 days in a school year for all races of children without IEPs. If the difference for special education by a specific race is more than 4 points higher than general education for all races, a district will flag and be required to submit a self-assessment. Note: a district has to have more than one student in special education with an out-of-school suspension expulsion of greater than 10 days in order to flag. On the right side of the slide is the measurement for SIG-Dispro, which uses a risk ratio methodology and examines 5 disciplinary actions and durations. Significant disproportionality in discipline requires a 3-year pattern trend for identification. The risk ratio analysis uses the special education discipline data by race compared to the child count data by race. The 5 areas of analysis are in-school suspensions 10 days or less. This is a count of students by race. In-school suspensions greater than 10 days, count of students by race. Out-of-school suspensions 10 days or less, a count of students by race. Out-of-school suspensions, expulsions greater than 10 days, count of students by race. Total removals is a count of students by race who receive ISS, OSS, and/or alternative environment. If a district has a risk ratio greater than 3 for 3 consecutive years in the same area and race, they are required to set aside funds and provide comprehensive coordinated early intervening services, also known as CCEIS. The next element of analysis is identification. In the APR Indicator 9 identification, The measurement is a risk ratio special education child count by race compared to the October 1 enrollment by race. Districts with a risk ratio greater than 3 are flagged and must complete and submit this self-assessment. Under SIG Dispro is the same measurement used in the APR. However, districts with a risk ratio greater than 3 for 3 consecutive years for the same race ethnicity is required to set aside funds and provide comprehensive coordinated early intervening services, CCEIS. The next element of analysis is identification in specific disability categories. The 6 disability categories to be analyzed are the same for both the APR and SIG Dispro. The categories are intellectual disability, autism, other health impaired, speech language impaired, specific learning disability, and emotional disturbance. In the APR Indicator 10, Identification by Disability, the measurement is a risk ratio special education child count by race and disability category compared to the October 1 enrollment by race. Districts with a risk ratio greater than 3 are flagged and must complete the self-assessment. Under SIG Dispro is the same measurement used in the APR. However, districts with a risk ratio greater than 3 for 3 consecutive years for the same race, ethnicity, and disability category is required to set aside funds and provide comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. The last element of analysis is least restrictive environment or educational environment. This measure does not apply to the APR. The 2 educational environment areas being analyzed are less than 40% of the day in the regular classroom and day schools. Under SIG Dispro, the measurement is a risk ratio and uses the child count educational environment data by race compared to the child count data. This is different from identification in disability category, which is compared to the district enrollment. Districts with a risk ratio greater than 3 for 3 consecutive years for the same race, ethnicity, and educational environment area is required to set aside funds and provide comprehensive coordinated early intervening services, CCEIS. The last topic of discussion is the self-assessment. For the APR, in accordance with IDEA, a local education agency flagged for significant discrepancy and/or disproportionate representation must complete a review of policy, procedures, and practices in the area identified. The disproportionality self-assessment can clear an LEA of significant discrepancy or disproportionate representation if inappropriate policy, procedures, and practices are not identified. For SIG Dispro, in accordance with IDEA, a local education agency identified with having significant disproportionality must complete a review of policy, procedures, and practices in the affected area. To be identified, an LEA must flag for 3 consecutive years in the same race and category. The disproportionality self-assessment cannot clear an LEA of significant disproportionality even if inappropriate policy, procedures, or practices are not identified. Identified LEAs must set aside 15% of newly allocated funds and implement comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. Thank you for reviewing Data Talk. We hope you have found it to be helpful and will join us for upcoming webinars. If you wish to contact us, you may do so through the mail at IDEA Data and Research, University of Arkansas at Little Rock, 2801 South University Avenue, Education 209, Little Rock, Arkansas 72204. Our phone number is 501-683-7219. Our fax number is 501-569-8238. If you have any questions, you can contact Dr. Jody Fields at jafields@ualr.edu.